Hi everyone, welcome to this video. My name is Melina Messing. I'm the Scientific Director of Santa Barbara Nutrients Renew program, which is a nutrition program for PKD patients. And I'm super excited to be able to talk to Natasha today. Natasha is from the PKD-Free Alliance. She's the spokeswoman for this alliance, and she is not only a PKD patient, but also has a very personal journey with the PKD-Free Alliance and is here to tell us all about it. This organization is focused on basically making the next generation free of PKD by providing genetic testing, or by providing funds for genetic testing. I am myself a PKD patient and a woman in my early 30s, so it's a very relevant topic for me, and I can't wait to get to dive into what Natasha's story is. So welcome, Natasha, and thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, so maybe let's start with just give us a better introduction here on the PKD-Free Alliance, a little bit more detail maybe, and the types of funding that they provide and resources for people who are looking to start a family.
Perfect. So the PKD-Free Alliance is an organization, and they are providing different levels of funding for the journey to have a PKD-free baby. So to start with, in order to have a PKD-free baby, you have to go through a process called IVF. This is to ensure that you are not passing down the gene that would typically be passed down from generation to generation. If you conceived naturally, there's a 50% chance of passing the gene down. So what labs can do nowadays is they can create this probe, and it is called PGTM testing. And this probe is based on your DNA and someone else in your family who also has the disease's DNA. They create a probe to then test your embryos to make sure that you're only going to implant the ones that do not have the disease. So when I went through the process, I had to have an egg retrieval, and then my husband gave his sample, and we created a bunch of embryos. Out of all the ones we created, 6 of them did not have PKD. So that is the very vague overview of what that looks like. But the PKD-Free Alliance, they have $3,000 worth of funding available to families that want to go through this process of the PGTM probe being built for them. They also have a separate grant program where they can offer up to $9,000 of funding for the entire IVF cycle. They're able to do this because they are partnering with different big fertility companies out there like US Fertility, and they're starting to create these large partnerships where they can create these very large discounts for IVF. IVF is extremely expensive. Our round, I want to say, was close to $30,000 for the first round and my first 2 transfers. So it's a pricey journey, and they are out here just trying to spread the word that there's funding available and we can truly impact the next generation and end this disease.
Wow, that's so amazing. From my perspective, I'm sure from many PKD patients' perspectives, that's a fantastic opportunity. I think a lot of PKD patients consider IVF, but then the price tag is really what is the deciding factor at the end, and
Absolutely.
having some, even getting parts of it funded, or even the entire thing. It's hard to put into words how valuable that is, and it makes that whole prospect a lot more, feasible for many patients out there. Does it then depend on what type of insurance you have to get this funding, or
So
what
the
are kind of the requirements,
Yeah, so the funding is available to all people that are trying to, end this disease in their family lines. It is definitely hard to have fertility coverage. Most people do not have fertility coverage, and if they do, there's crazy limitations on it. It might only be for one egg retrieval. It might be for only one transfer at a time. IVF's not a guarantee, unfortunately. It took us 2 transfers to get to our PKD-free baby, Juliana, and every transfer is between $5,000 and $10,000. So they do have this extended grant program for families, and people just need to know about it so that they can take advantage of it. And it's
Yeah.
super important to dive into your insurance benefits. There's so much fine print. I had so many conversations with United Healthcare during my journey. They would say one thing in the print, and they're like, oh, well, you don't actually qualify because I didn't have fertility issues. And then it wasn't covered. So it's very hard because most people think that IVF means you have fertility issues, and people don't know that you can do this to eradicate diseases. I had people reaching out to me from my past, from college, saying like, hey, we saw your story on Instagram and we're going to do the exact same thing for a cancer gene. And now you're starting to eradicate other diseases that we don't have cures for yet. So it's a really cool movement. And I'm really hoping that the PKD-Free Alliance can keep this momentum going and we can change the world, truly.
Yeah, really. Very, very much so. Yeah. And do you want to touch a little bit on your kind of personal journey with PKD? When did you
Yeah.
get diagnosed or find out about it? Is it in your family? Was it in your, previous generations? And then at what point did you make that decision to do IVF for it,
Yeah, so my mom has PKD. She had a transplant at about, I want to say she was 50, 51 years old. So she was the youngest in her family to undergo a transplant. Her mother had it, her sister had it. It's been on my maternal side for many, 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 many generations. When I was about 21, I was seriously dating my now husband, and I just made that decision of I want to get tested. I want to be able to tell this man, like, hey, I have a 50-50 shot of passing down this pretty tough disease. And I thought that was fair to be able to share with him. So I went and got an ultrasound done. It was very evident that there were cysts all over my kidneys and my liver. And they're like, yes, you have PKD, with knowing, your mom has it. So that's where we started. At 25 years old, we moved out to Colorado, and I went to the University of Colorado, saw a nephrologist there who specializes in PKD, and he had mentioned like, hey, I have a patient who's undergoing IVF, and I was like, what are you talking about? And he just gave me more details that, you can test the embryo, and that just stuck in my head for a couple years. So when we decided like we were ready to, potentially start building our family, I met with an IVF clinic who then put me in touch with a genetic counselor, and we started the process of going through the genetics behind it, which is a whole nother ball game. We met with a genetic counselor. I had to have a full blood panel done. My husband had a full blood panel done that we tested for like 360 different diseases, like genetic diseases. Obviously, PKD came back for me. So that's where we're really confirming it. But I had a weird scenario because I had two variants of the disease. So we had to see which parent passed down which one, to make sure that we were building a probe for the correct variant. So if the other one started with me, we didn't know if that one was disease causing. If we knew it came from my dad does not have PKD. So we had to do blood work on both of my parents. My dad showed that he had a PKD gene, but was not active for, having PKD. So we were then able to proceed making the probe with me and my mom's DNA. So once the probe was created, we moved ahead with our egg retrieval. We retrieved like 70 something eggs. It was a huge success. And then we ended with 6 PKD-free embryos. And we transferred our first one in that January, and it did not stick. So then the second one we transferred in April of 2023, and that was Juliana, and she was born on December 8th, 2023.
Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank you.
This
And
is
when you,
your first, right?
yes.
That's the only kid you have so far?
Yes, she is our first one, and we have 4 more PKD-free embryos, and we are about to start the process to transfer our next one. So we are
Exciting.
extremely excited, but we knew when we wanted to start building a family that there was no other way to do it. Like we knew that we had to end this disease if we had the ability to, if we had the financial ability to. Like there was no way I could see myself like willingly passing this down when there was a possible way that it didn't have to be that way. I know
Yeah.
my mom and my grandma always felt guilt for having children, and I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't have been here if they didn't have me, right? But I try to just remind them, like, you didn't have the option that I had now. So my husband and I, he's in the medical field, like, it was a no-brainer. I couldn't put my child through what I know I'm going to have to go through in my future.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. It's a fantastic opportunity that is provided. So and not to have to even grow up with, even though this disease doesn't really affect you
Yeah.
early in life, but
Yeah.
just the knowledge it's going to hit you at some point is definitely
Mhm.
mentally challenging to deal with early on. Um,
Mhm.
what would you say have been, what's the general feedback from your family or maybe people in your community? Um, was it mostly support or, kind of the general feedback online? I know you posted about it, so there's just
Yeah.
generally the feedback you've gotten so far about going through this.
Yeah, I think mostly it's been positive. People are supportive. Um, it is hard because people have a negative view on IVF, and we've had the question before of what do you do with the leftover embryos, right? Are you going to have four more children? When does life start? Like those are all really deep moral
Yeah.
questions that my husband and I sat down and we thought through, and we decided that we're not passing this along if we can control it. So we just went with our gut, and it's our child that we're going to raise. And we just did what was best for our family in that moment. And I hope people are supportive of that decision. I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm shouting it from the rooftops that our child is PKD free, that she was born via IVF. And I will always stand and support IVF moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I've heard. I mean, obviously that controversy is pretty out there. Like, when does life start, and the IVF in general. But also, there seems to be in the PKD community, some PKD patients feel it. It's somehow saying, PKD people with PKD are not worth living.
Yeah.
Things like that. Have you heard that
I have
particular
not.
criticism, or
I
because I've
have
heard it in
not.
the community?
Yeah, I have not honestly heard specifically like, oh, PKD free patients like don't have a right to live or shouldn't live. Like, absolutely, I'm loving life right now, right? I'm healthy. I'm fortunate. Like, I love where I'm at. It's just we have the technology and the
Yeah,
capability to end this. So it's like, wouldn't you want no one else to suffer? Like, if you can control that nobody else has to go through this. I mean, I'm sitting here, it's uncomfortable because my kidneys are so big. Like, I sit at a desk and it's uncomfortable. I drive to work, it's uncomfortable. Like, my daughter doesn't have to go through that. And we could truly end it in this generation. So it's not a valid argument to me. Like, everyone, has their own opinion and has the right to do what they want for their future. But PKD-Free Alliance is here to, impact generational health and just truly make that difference.
yeah, I totally agree. I was just from a patient perspective, I don't think that's what that means. That it's just helping the next generation, helping your own kids be more
Yeah.
healthy, and that doesn't mean that our existence isn't worth anything. And it's
Yeah.
just we're at a time where we have the ability to change it, and now with funding even more so from organizations like the PKD-Free Alliance. So it really is. I think I would have a lot of guilt not going this route, and just having kids without it. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited that obviously, if for some people it doesn't work, the process, or it's still too expensive, but
Mhm.
if you can afford it, I agree. It's absolutely the right way to go.
Yeah. And like, I just want to leave the world a better place than I found it. And we have the technology and the resources to do that.
Yeah.
So let's do it.
So, for someone who is like right at the start of this journey, like what are the kind of the common questions or the first steps that one would take? And also, I guess, kind of second question with IVF, were there any concerns about doing the IVF process and while having PKD? I'm sure I've heard that carrying a pregnancy is generally fine,
Yeah.
especially if you're still earlier on. But what was your experience with that?
Yeah. So The biggest concern was going to be my blood pressure throughout the pregnancy. I was already teetering on high blood pressure, but honestly, my blood pressure was controlled and stayed low until 34 weeks of pregnancy, and then it started to spike. So I was in the doctor's office every few days getting it checked. That was the biggest concern, was definitely the blood pressure. I ended up induced at 37 weeks because it did spike too high, and they were worried about preeclampsia. But other than that, I was honestly okay. My kidney function remained stable throughout the process. The one thing my nephrologist did say, when the first embryo did not stick and we were moving into our second transfer, our IVF doctor is like, well, you're a candidate for 2 embryos to be placed, but you're at a risk of twins then. So I reached out to my nephrologist and I'm like, is that a good idea? Like, do we take that risk? And he's like, just think of how much space, like, your kidneys are already taking up. Like, carrying 2 in you is just going to be debilitating at some point. Like, you don't have a ton of room in there and it's just going to be super uncomfortable. So he's like, if you could try to just put 1 in and see if it works. If it splits, which sometimes it does in IVF, so be it. But if you could try to prevent that from happening and just put 1 in, like, that was his suggestion. So we moved ahead with just 1 embryo. So that was just, keeping my doctor's team, like, in constant communication with one another to make sure that we were all on the same page with what we were doing.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Yeah.
So yeah, in the 1 pregnancy, like, I'm extremely tall, so I feel like it wasn't super uncomfortable for me, but and yeah, this disease causes your kidneys to grow, so I
Okay.
could see carrying 2 would be difficult.
Yes. Yeah. Um, yeah, that was the second question. The first one was
Yeah.
like kind of first steps, and what would you say to someone who's maybe, at that decision point, and where to look and how to get started, basically.
Yeah, so I would first definitely dive into your insurance benefits, like know what you have coverage for, what you have coverage for testing. And then my next point would be reach out to the nearest IVF clinic. However, all IVF clinics are not created equally, so do some research. Where can you go for this treatment? Look at the success rates, the pregnancy rates at those different clinics. I'm in Denver, Colorado. There are a lot of big clinics out here, but I did my research and picked the doctor that had the highest success rate and started there. When I explained to him, like, hey, I'm not doing this for fertility issues that I know of. We never tried naturally, but we want to do it for PGTM. He set me up with the lab and the genetic counselor, and then we moved on from there. So research is key to start off. You don't want to go into this blind and have a million appointments that you're, going in blindly. So I would definitely start with checking your insurance benefits and then reaching out to a solid IVF clinic near you.
And at what point would you then get in touch with the PKD-Free Alliance and apply for one of their grants?
Yeah, so once you're with the IVF doctor and you have a cost sheet in front of you, you know what you're going to be proceeding with an egg retrieval, like, reach out and apply. Any part of that process, they will happily help. So reach out to them, their website, there's an application you can fill out. You can reach out to me on Instagram. I'm happy to walk through. I've answered a ton of questions for people all around the country. One of my biggest questions I get is, what are the hormones like? Like, I heard IVF makes you crazy. And I'm like, there's a lot of hormone shots. I'm used to needles at this point, but the hormones weren't that bad. They didn't affect me, but they affect everyone differently. But I am here to be a resource, to be a support, to be your cheerleader, because
Mhm.
a lot of people don't have a space, especially in social media, where it's like, you're doing IVF for this reason. Like, it's a very small population. People have a million Instagram accounts about just IVF for fertility issues, but not specifically when you're doing it for eliminating a disease.
Yeah, yeah. And what determines, is it if kind of first comes first serve, who gets the funding, or is there more criteria that determine if someone does get the funding for the testing?
So right now, there's a lot of funding out there, verifying you, right? You have PKD,
Right.
and you're working with an IVF doctor and like this is the route you are taking. Right now there's 112 families, I believe, like in the grant program. But at this point, there's a handful of pregnancies announced and a handful of babies have been born. So there is funding there to be used. So apply for it.
That's really good to know.
Yeah.
And at what point is the genetic testing done, and can that be done on, because some people just choose to freeze their eggs or embryos early just for, I don't want to make a decision right now, but I want to have that opportunity in the future. At what point is that genetic testing done? Does it have to be on fresh embryos, or is frozen? Does that still work?
Yeah, so I believe it still works. So even on a frozen embryo, there's always more risk when you have to defrost an embryo to take a sample of it and then refreeze. There's always more of a risk doing that. But there are people that are just, freezing their eggs. The probe is made and it's ready for them when they are ready to go. My probe is at Natera's lab, wherever that is. And it is waiting for if I ever were to do another round and needed, another egg retrieval. Hopefully I do not, and the rest of our embryos will be utilized, but it's there and it's built, so we can use it. So definitely early on the probe can be made, and yeah, freezing your eggs if you're not ready to have children
Good
at this
decision.
point, yeah, it's definitely an option.
That's great. That was pretty much my questions. Do you have anything else that you would like to share about your journey or the PKD-Free Alliance that people should know about? Anything we didn't cover today?
I just think I just want to continue to spread the word and, help individuals realize that there is funding. There are a bunch of people that are also going through this journey right by your side, and we're available to help. I want to continue to, do interviews, be on air, any newscast I could do to just shout this from the roof that PKD Free Alliance is here. They're here to help. They have money available for you, and we are truly trying to end this disease. My Instagram is PKD ends with me because it does in my family line. I remember I took a picture with my mom and I was pretty far into labor, and I remember I captioned it like, "This disease ended here, like in this moment. It's over.
Yeah,
Like it's just me and my mom. I will be the last one in my family line." And it's emotional and it's
very.
it's amazing though. So I will forever cherish that photo. But yeah, that is what PKD Free is doing. They are out there and they are changing lives.
It's like making me tear up, honestly. That's a very powerful message. Like really, from a patient's perspective, it's so great to hear that story. And yeah, I hope that the audience today will think the same, and we have some PKD patients always tuning in, and I hope that if there is someone in that stage, that is like me, who is like considering maybe having a family in the near future, I hope that message reaches them, that there is this tool out there and the support system as well, which is really important. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, that was all the questions I had, and thank you so much again for being here today, for sharing that wonderful story and powerful message. I hope to do this again soon.
Awesome.
And I hope that, as I said, this reaches lots of people and we can spread the word,
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. We are super honored to be featured on here today. So thank you so much for taking the time to interview us.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.